Good evening. I'm Professor Sarah Churchwell, Director of the Being Human Festival at the University of London School of Advanced Study, and I'm delighted to welcome you all to our 2021 launch festivities this evening. Before we turn to our events tonight, including our discussion with our distinguished guest, Lemn Sissay, a couple of housekeeping points first. Please note that the chat function is closed for this event, but you will be able to ask questions during our conversation with Lemn. For this, you can use the Q&A function on Zoom. There should be a little icon for this in your toolbar. Please also be aware that this event is being recorded. Please note that any question you ask and the answer will form part of the recording, and that is subsequently going to be made available online. You can ask your question anonymously if you choose by ticking the anonymized box before you submit your question. Captions are available if you press the CC button in your toolbar, and you can also choose to hide subtitles via that same button as well. We are also delighted here at the Being Human Festival team to welcome a new festival manager, Mark Johnson, who's just joined us this year. I'm going to ask Mark to turn on his camera just to say hi, and also to let everybody know that I have been having a few technical issues lately. There's Mark. Hi, Mark. So he's saying hi to everybody.
Hello, everyone.
I've had a few technical issues lately, so if I disappear, Mark is going to take over, and now you'll know who he is, and it won't be completely confusing if suddenly somebody else pops up and starts hosting. But my Zoom has developed a bad habit of crashing. I think my Zoom has Zoom fatigue, as we all do. But hopefully, obviously, that won't happen. But just in case, we have a plan B. As that just indicated, we all know that in 2021, we continue to face challenging circumstances like crashing Zooms and having to have conversations on Zoom, and indeed having to hold part of our festival events online for reasons that nobody needs to have explained to them. And so first and foremost, as part of our introduction to this year's festival events, which will be beginning on Thursday, first and foremost, I want to thank our festival organizers, the researchers around the country who have responded so creatively to these ongoing challenges and figured out ways to create creative, innovative, fun, interactive, participatory ways to explore humanities research together. So a little bit about the Being Human Festival for those of you who aren't familiar with it. The Being Human Festival is the UK's annual free national festival celebrating research in the humanities, and it's funded through the generous support of Research England. Every November for 10 days, we support researchers around the United Kingdom who connect their research with the curiosity of local communities in creative ways to produce new collaborative forms of knowledge. It's a festival, so we are very much not academic business as usual. We are not really about lectures and panel talks, and we are definitely not about symposia. We're more about walking tours and pop-up exhibitions and interactive encounters with ideas and skills and questions. Since 2014, we've put on over 1,500 free events all over the country and indeed around the world. And to date, those events have been attended or watched by at least 200,000 people. This year, our theme is renewal, as we all consider the ways in which we really need to renew, recharge, and restore. The festival this year will take place between the 11th and the 20th of November. As I said, it starts on Thursday and then will run for the next 10 days. We will be putting on over 225 events organized by 64 universities and research organizations all over the country in partnership with around 144 cultural and community groups and organizations. We like to say that this is a national festival by virtue of being local. There will be events somewhere not too far from you, and with the digital turn that we've all made, there will also be events happening all 10 days from the convenience of your own laptop screen. We have a range of in-person and online events this year. They're being generated from 51 cities and towns all across the United Kingdom, including Glasgow, Lincoln, Coventry, and Swansea, where we have festival hubs. I'm also really delighted to say that we're being joined again this year by the University of Melbourne in Australia, who are also creating an international hub for us this year. And they are also demonstrating how we can all continue to try to be human and be more human amidst the challenges of a pandemic. If you want to tweet about tonight's event or the festival in general, please do so. You can find us at Being Human Fest, and please use the hashtag BeingHuman2021. Just a couple of thank yous, and then I will move into our main events. I promise it's not all just me making speeches and giving thank yous. But I do need to thank a few people. First of all, as I said at the beginning, the event organizers across the country who have been absolutely killing themselves, making over 225 free public engagement activities happen during these circumstances. We also, I of course want to thank the School of Advanced Study at the University of London, who lead and support the festival, and our partners, the Arts and Humanities Research Council and the British Academy, for their generous ongoing support and funding of the festival. This year, we have also had special additional support made available by UK Research and Innovation and the AHRC for a COP26 hub in Glasgow. I also just want to thank our colleagues at the School of Advanced Study and Senate House who help us running the festival throughout the year. Although we are a small festival team, we really rely on our colleagues across the school for supporting us. And I also want to thank our own Being Human Festival team. They would be embarrassed if I called them out, but they know who they are. And that the festival has continued this year is almost entirely down to them. So to their commitment and their care and their ability to take things forward and to work with all of these events organizers to pull off the festival. So my thanks and gratitude to everyone who has helped pull this together. I'm now going to play a film. Oh, I'm not doing it. The team is doing it. I'm now going to take credit for their putting on a film, which is highlighting, we're actually really excited about this film. It's going to highlight some of the marvelous events that will be taking place during the festival this year. So I'm going to turn off my camera now, and it's just a very brief film, but it will give you a taste of what's to come.
2021 had been a year to rethink, to reimagine, and for some to reunite. While world leaders discussed the climate crisis and the pandemic continued to shape our daily lives, the Being Human Festival asks, what can we do? What do we want? How can we bring about change? How do we think about being human now? In 51 towns and cities across the UK, communities are coming together for over 200 Being Human events, exploring how we can think afresh and plan for brighter futures.
Hello, my name is Maisha Wester, and I'm organizing a Being Human exhibit called His House to Our Home, collaborating with the artist KOG. This exhibit asks the community to contribute art, telling the story of what home has been, or envisioning what a truly inclusive home looks like.
Hi everyone, I'm Richard Fittney-Yorkie, beaming in from Exeter, and I can't wait for you to come along to our free online performance and help us renew our understanding of LGBTQIA+ loneliness and belonging in the Southwest.
Conversations are starting, ideas are being shared, connections are being made. We believe that change is always possible and there's abundant hope for renewal. Please come along and join the conversation.
This year's theme of renewal is so apposite. We're standing here in front of the Coventry Cathedral, which itself is seen as one of the major symbols of renewal in the country, if not in the whole of Europe. That the cathedral was reborn out of the ashes of the old cathedral. It's something that is incredibly close to the heart of Coventry as a city.
It's really broad and wide-ranging. We have university students doing it as well as members of the public. But the biggest thing that's affected the content has been COVID and the pandemic. And those sketchbooks have really been a tool to allow people to talk about their experience, their mental well-being, and how they've coped during lockdown. So we've had lots and lots of pictures of viewing out of windows and their day-to-day lives and how they felt about lockdown, which has been quite extraordinary to look at in hindsight. What we want people to get out of the project is a sense of creative community, that their storytelling, their narratives are going to be heard, that they're important for the future of Coventry. For us, the exhibition is about colour, it's about joy, it's about elevation and celebration. And when we are selecting the work, which we're doing at the moment, that's our biggest priority.
Hi, I'm Jelena and I'm going to be at the Food and Idea Exchange London. And I'm looking forward to sharing with you dental delights from the Archaeological Skeletal Collections for the Being Human Festival 2021.
My name is Victoria McCollum from the School of Arts and Humanities at Ulster University, and we're coming to you live from Riverside Theatre for Being Human on the Highway to Hell. Our storytelling experts and historians will reconsider the important role that our monster plays in society, especially during times of unprecedented change. So join us to discuss your favourite films, television shows, novels, comics, and creepypasta.
My name is Kevin Leomo. I am a composer and I'm a PhD researcher here at the University of Glasgow. I'm involved with Being Human Festival in the event called Collective Care. So this is an event being hosted by the Hunterian Museum. It's really exciting to be part of Being Human Festival this year as it follows immediately on from COP26. This is such a momentous occasion for Glasgow, and it's such an amazing opportunity for arts and humanities voices to be heard in the discourse on the climate crisis.
For the University of Lincoln, being part of the festival and especially being a hub is a really great opportunity for us to really develop and enhance our program of what we can offer working with local creative professionals and our academics.
I love creating with people outside academia in my research. What I get from the public is their questions. And so often the question that people say, this is going to sound a really silly question. And it never is, because it's always, they offer new perspective, and it's just fun sharing something you're interested in as well. What I hope people will enjoy from the workshops is the mindfulness of the creative process, the chance to think about the impact the pandemic has had, both remembering the sad parts, but also thinking about the things that helped them through it.
What most excites us about it is the fact that this is potentially a long-term living legacy that replicates those artefacts that would have been found within the medieval time periods in them today. So there's that reflection back to history, and hopefully the public can understand the importance of actually this project and what it represents. That future generations hopefully will see it and say, well, my grandparents may have lived through that. So it's that element of concept that history has repeated itself.
Whether you're in Cardiff, Edinburgh, Bath or Manchester, you can get involved in the Being Human Festival between the 11th and 20th of November. The humanities have the ability to make us think new about our world, our society and our community. So join in this celebration of creativity and cultural exploration as we get to the heart of what it really means to be human.
So our thanks to all of the organizers who took part in that film, and especially to Samira Ahmed for her wonderful narration. Now, before we turn to our conversation with Lemn, we are very lucky to have 2 poetry readings up first. The topics of these poems will inform our conversation with Lemn afterwards, and they're going to touch on themes that are particularly relevant to being human in 2021. First, we have poet and author Natalie Ann Holobrow with her poem, Being Human. This poem is from a very special collection that came about as a legacy of Swansea University's 2020 Being Human Festival event, New World, New Beginnings. The collection offers reflections on the past, contemplations of new experiences, and a celebration of human resilience and connectivity. Swansea University has very kindly provided 10 copies of this published collection to give away to attendees who entered our social media competition, and will be in touch with the lucky winners shortly. So I'm now going to hand over to Natalie to read Being Human.
Thank you, Sarah. A little note about the poem and the event before I read it. The chance to pause and write and connect through words was the very essence of the Being Human Festival. I found that by sharing our words, we became more than just those pixels on a laptop screen that we were so used to last year. We read, we listened, we felt, and we learned that we're more resilient than we actually know. And as long as we can write, not even that global pandemic prevented us last year from connecting. Art goes beyond internet connection. It's a reminder that art helps us to feel, and to feel is to be human. And this is a poem named after the festival, Being Human. That summer, the city closed in on itself. Everyone was the last human alive slumping to sleep at the laptop, with someone always stretching their fingers outwards, stuck on another planet. Each small hazard of the day sopped useless with soap foam. Raspberries bloody to ripeness, shopping bags sagged with milk, and the housefly's drunken wing beat drilled hours against the fruit bowl. One evening, the sky was so intense I lifted my charcoal to smudge it. I wanted not the coarseness of newspapers, nor that familiar human game of distraction, but to tread off into my sketchbook. An earth lost and wanted things. A forgotten face sleeping in palimpsest. My fingertips searching for breath.
That was wonderful. Thank you very much. We now have another poem, which I have managed to lose somehow. Sorry, Yvonne, I beg your pardon. Next up, we have poet and researcher Yvonne Reddick, who is an AHRC Leadership Fellow at the University of Central Lancashire. For 2021, Yvonne is running a wonderful event with the British Academy called Planting Poetry, which will be looking at Seamus Heaney's eco-poetry. So Yvonne, if you want to turn your camera on, we've got something a little bit different up. Yvonne has agreed to put the power in the hands of our audience today to choose which poem you're going to read. So a poll should be popping up on everyone's screen now, and you can choose which theme you would like Yvonne to read a poem about. You can only choose one. She's not going to read all of them, unfortunately. Maybe next year she'll read another one. So the 3 choices clearly are climate change, encountering nature during lockdown, or mental health and the environment. So please, everyone, make a choice, and Yvonne will read that poem.
I'm excited, Sarah.
I know, me too.
Oh yeah.
I just realized I hadn't submitted my answer. I have just submitted my answer. I have voted.
Wonderful. Ah, fabulous. We have encountering nature during lockdown. So thank you so much for inviting me to read. I'm really happy to share this poem with you. It's set in the Peak District. I can remember longing to get outdoors during lockdown. I craved it deeply, and I mean more than just being able to kind of roam around my local street. So this poem celebrates a landmark in the Peak District that I love. It's upon Kinder Scout. Dear Tor, I've been away a year, Tor. I've needed your grit, the blink of light in the fissure at your heart. Tor, those were the months the city shuddered. Breath was taxed, air was weaponized, locks clipped their steel tongues shut, stayed mute. Goldfinches on the building site, mushrooms infested the wood panels on my balcony. Moss rioted an underfoot forest, bird's nest fern and heart's tongue by the potted lettuce. Squadrons of flies. I need heather honey air, Tor. I need the rainy breezes. I need water. Give me your patient sedimentary endurance, the wind breathing in you, the same view down the valley for millennia, rain laving you, moorgrass feathering your chin, bilberries springing at the corner of your eye. Tor, years stream from your back, you who remember when this rain-lit upland was estuary, when the edges sailed at the equator and the land was wave. Tor, give us time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Yvonne. That was fantastic. Thank you to both Natalie and to Yvonne for our poetry readings, a very appropriate way to lead into a conversation with Lemn Sissay. Lemn Sissay OBE is a BAFTA-nominated and international prize-winning author, a renowned poet. He's the winner of prizes including the Pen Pinter Prize, the Points of Light Award, and he was, of course, the official poet of the 2012 London Olympics. He's just finished a new Radio 4 series called Lemn Sissay's Rebel Poets that will be airing later this month, which is about rebel poets, as the name suggests, from the 50s and 60s to today. He's also the Chancellor of the University of Manchester, where he works to widen participation, increase inclusivity, and grow engagement with research. We are truly honored and delighted to have him here with us tonight to discuss some of the topics that are being explored in this year's festival. If you'd like to ask Lemn any questions, please feel free to begin dropping them into the Q&A box starting now. We'll weave them in as we go rather than having a kind of me interviewing Lemn and then audience questions. We're hoping to have a more interactive conversation that way. So please, I think it's okay to say ask anything if we don't.
Yeah, absolutely.
If Lemn doesn't want to answer it, he won't.
And also, if I can answer it, I will, and if I can't answer it, I won't. I'll know somebody who can. So yeah, that's like the role of Chancellor of the University, is if you can't answer something, you will know somebody who can. Also, to talk about being the Chancellor of a university, if you ever want to feel a little less intelligent than what you thought you were, then become a Chancellor of a university, because you are surrounded by incredible minds of people researching, teaching, and committing to their subject matter on a minute-by-minute daily basis. So I'm surrounded by some incredible minds.
Well, it's great to hear, and you know, I think for those of us who live and work in universities, we know what you mean. It's the privilege of being surrounded by this inspiration of creative and intellectual energy. I was going to come to the question of your being Chancellor a little bit later, but since you brought it, since you brought it up, let's start with it. University, although, you know, as you said, those of us who work there enjoy the privilege of that kind of mental energy and the sharing of research and ideas. But of course, the flip side of that is that universities are often criticized for being a closed ivory tower, for keeping knowledge locked within instead of bringing it out. And I wonder, as Chancellor of one of the UK's biggest civic universities, what part do you think a civic university can play in actually bringing communities together rather than building walls between them?
That's a really good question, which is a sentence, which is a line that people often use to play for time. That's a really good question, but it's a beautiful question because it strikes right at the core of what the University of Manchester is about. We have social responsibility as one of our 3 core goals, which means that every activity that we embark upon, every activity that we embark upon, we need to be answerable to social responsibility across the board. And it's a rare thing that a university has social responsibility as its core goal. What does that mean? That means that we set up a thing called the Works, which is about getting local people, local to Manchester, within 100 yards of where the university is, for the unemployed to get work. It's called The Works, and it's a social enterprise, and it's very big and it's very successful. It's right in the heart of Moss Side. And there are so many other ways that we connect with the community outside of us. We have more lecturers on parent, oh gosh, what are they called? The schools have them, governorships at schools throughout the northwest of England than any other university. There are homelessness charities which are based at and work through the University of Manchester. I think we are very connected with our local community. There are so many examples. It's so big that it's difficult to list them all. However, I want to say something about ivory towers, Sarah.
Please.
In my experience as an artist and as a creative, I have to be careful about this because one of the problems with identifying an ivory tower is that, coming from the community, that you build an ivory tower yourself and you shake your fist at the other ivory towers. And then what we have is a forest of ivory towers of people saying, I wasn't let into that one, so I've built my own. So I do love the sort of like, I do think that's something that in my own practice as an artist and creative that I try to break down before building one myself. That sounds quite abstract, doesn't it? We're in the place of metaphors here. But what I'm trying to say is that building the same structure as the one that you feel excluded from actually can repeat the behaviors of the structure that you're actually angry against. This is why I find Extinction Rebellion really interesting, an interesting idea of action which feels non-linear. It's like a virus getting to where the weak spot is. It's not trying to replicate the institution that it's supposed to be against. I find that very interesting.
I find that really interesting too, and I don't in any way want to cut you off because I'm going to come back to the importance of the terms that we use. I would love to go off on a thing about metaphor, but that might have to be another conversation. I would personally like nothing better. But there's a question in the Q&A following on from your thoughts about being a chancellor.
Okay.
And then I'll come back to some more words that are central to what we do and how we think about it. But there's a question, I think it's a really good question, about becoming chancellor,
Yeah.
which is what was your greatest fear and what was your greatest hope in becoming chancellor?
When I became chancellor, I said that I wanted to inspire and be inspired. So be inspired by the university, by the people in it, by the work that they do, and to inspire, as in to support, encourage, and promote the best practice of the university outside of it, in my being, in doing what I do as an artist and creative. My worst fear was that I wasn't good enough. And my hope was just that I would connect with the university, the different departments. But my worst fear was that, it's a minister without portfolio role. It's ceremonial. You can do a lot or you can do a little. I think I've done a lot. But my biggest fear is that there's something that I might not have done. I might not have raised enough money for the university. I might not have, and I worried that I might say something at an event that will bring the university down, or that somebody will point at me and say, my God, he said that, or he wrote that. As an artist, it's very important to be free to write whatever you want to write. As a human being, it's important to be able to be free to say whatever you want to say. I was always worried that I may hurt somebody without realizing it.
It's interesting, I can see that, but I never really thought about being a poet and being a chancellor being kind of intention in that way, but I can see exactly what you're saying about why they would be, because you say those freedoms have to be constrained partly by the responsibilities of the role, or potentially constrained by the responsibilities.
Yeah. But what I found, oh God, I've got a great story, but I can't say it. But what I found is that it's okay. Just keep doing what you're doing. Just don't censor yourself for a set of rules which you don't know about. You will be who you are, be the best you can be as who you are, and sort of trying to keep that mindset is important. The more responsibility you're given, or the more roles you find yourself in. My biggest fear is that I would somehow harm the university. I've been in a chancellor for 6.5 years, and it's okay.
You're doing all right so far. You haven't managed to damage the University of Manchester beyond repair to date.
And it's but that tells you, maybe it will tell you about who I am and about my, when you ask for my fears, that it probably gives you a bit of a insight into some of my own stuff,
Well, I mean, it's all, I mean, not to keep bringing it back to this, but it is about being human, right? These different ways that we have of trying to be human while we do whatever it is that we're trying to do. And as you say, to do it to the best of our abilities, being ourselves. And so as the director of a festival called Being Human, I find myself thinking about basic stuff like that a lot, but it's also a festival of the humanities. As we've said, and that's a word that I therefore have to think about a lot. I direct a festival of the humanities, and my title is that I'm a professor of public understanding of the humanities. I wonder for you as a poet, or as chancellor, when you come across this word, the humanities, because in my experience, sometimes people find it a little bit academic, a little bit esoteric, but I wonder, what does that word mean to you when where does your mind go when you start thinking about the humanities?
I think of the arts, because the humanities are about the human experience, and the arts for me are one of the greatest expressions of what it is to be a human. And so when you go to humanities, I go to languages. I mean, as I got to know the university from the beginning, I realized that humanities takes in the Global Development Institute, it takes in Manchester Business School, and that humanities is in our motto, which is wisdom, which is knowledge, wisdom, and humanity. So, yeah, I understand humanities to be about the nature of humans. Being human is a very economic phrase, but that's what it's about. Didn't know that at school when I was studying humanities.
Yeah, right. I mean, I think that's so common, right? And it's something that we here at the festival talk about a lot, that we end up breaking down what the humanities are so that people know what it is that we're talking about, because we encounter the sciences as a discipline, and then we encounter history, language, literature, the arts, philosophy, and we know what all of those are. But unless we do them at university or as advanced degrees, we don't necessarily encounter them as the grouping of the humanities. It's something that we found ourselves talking about a lot in our neck of the woods during lockdown, because we live in a society that tells us that we can do without the humanities. And yet during lockdown, that's what everybody was instantly turning to, right? It was all of those subjects I just named, history and literature. Sorry, you started to take a breath. You want to say something? Go.
I was just going to say that the humanities is probably more important now than it's ever been in my lifetime. I was born after the Second World War. I was born in the late 60s. So in my lifetime, the humanities have never been more important than they are now. I think we are thinking of the human condition more now than we've ever done before, and so it's a good time for being human. And it seems, I would hope, I don't know, but I would hope that you're getting a flood of people wanting to be part of and involved in humanities. And more people recognizing that what they are doing is part of humanities. That's the disconnect, isn't it, between a person marching with a banner and then realizing that that is part of humanities, a person taking photographs, trying to record a moment, that is humanities, a person writing a poem or a song and singing, that is humanities. You know, a doctor touching somebody's wrist to diagnose, that's humanities. You know, it's just a case of making a connection for people, and being human's a great way of doing that.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it is. It's very much about making that connection. I agree. And one of the other ways, I think one of the other challenges that we face in trying to make those connections is this idea that we hear a lot about right now, that we can see the role that the sciences play in helping us address the obvious challenges that we face. I mean, pandemic, we needed medicine, we needed medical research, we needed the vaccine, everybody got that. But and you know, people are also looking for technological outcomes, right? So can we fix things? And as we are speaking now, as COP26 is currently taking place in Glasgow, as we try to confront the climate crisis, again, something that people talk about, you know, solving with science and with technology. But as you've just been, I think, implying, the humanities have a really important role to play in addressing these kinds of crises as well. What role do you think that subjects like, I mean, we can talk about poetry because it's dear to your heart, but also history or philosophy or language. What role do they play in the education and fight against these big crises?
I'm not sure I can answer that clearly, to be absolutely honest with you, except that the people telling the story of where we are now in our society can't just be the politicians and the institutions of government. They have to come from the people outside. And the telling of the story, particularly through art, to challenge some of the ideas which were being asked to take on is really important. And I think of the little statue, little Amal, the puppet that has travelled from Syria from Turkey to Manchester, and how that galvanized within all of the communities where little Alma, the puppet, little Amal, sorry, the giant puppet of this Syrian refugee, how she galvanized the people in every area that she went to. And that is in Manchester, the Manchester International Festival, the University of Manchester were part of little Amal's arrival, and even the city council. But the people of Manchester came out to support her as a symbol of a refugee, as a piece of art. And I should say that I think she's going to go to COP26.
Fantastic.
Yeah, that I think is going to happen. So to answer your question, which I'm not sure it was what it was now, but it is that actually art in the humanities has got a very strong role to play when it comes down to finding the story which will counter some of the political shenanigans that we're asked to accept.
Yeah, I think that's incredibly important, and that aspect of storytelling is so central to what we do and how we might be able to change the narrative. I mean, we talk about changing the narrative, and then people say that we don't need to understand narratives, and I'm always like, no, we should probably understand narratives if we want to change them. You know,
right? Science is in its own. Science is locked away on its own without a story to communicate what it's going to do. We go to space because we're inspired by the idea of space. The story of space is what needs to be, is what is shared, which allows us to think that that's going to space is a good thing, So
yeah. Well, that actually that fits perfectly with kind of what I was thinking about, which is thinking about asking next, which is that sometimes we say that the sciences and technology ask, how can this be done, or can this be done, like going to space? But the humanities remind us to ask, should this be done? Should we do it? Is this a good idea? Not just, is it possible? And that, I think that's the other aspect of the humanities that people are doing all of the time without thinking about the fact that that's actually part of what the humanities brings to the conversation.
Yeah. Yes, and that strikes to the amount of research that people in humanities do to find out what it is that the community wants as well, not just pushes it on, but actually, yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm really glad you brought that up, because that's actually really central to what we do in the Being Human Festival. It's incredibly important to us, exactly, that we're not parachuting academics into communities and saying, here's our expertise, congratulations, we shall now share it with you. But very much conversations with communities, with community organizers. It's about sharing curiosity. What does and sharing knowledges, recognizing that knowledge is all over the place. And how can we talk about fireworks going off behind me? Because we're celebrating knowledge. I don't know if you can hear them. They're all very excited about the humanities, literally a fireworks display. But I mean, well, that's living history, right? Fireworks going off behind me.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah. I loved what Samira Ahmed said. I wrote it down. She said, conversations are starting, ideas are being shared, and connections are being made. And I'd written down that I wanted to talk to you about, I just wanted to mention Arts Emergency. Today I had a meeting with Neil Griffiths, who started Arts Emergency. And there she is. Samira Ahmed is from Arts Emergency. And that's a great example of action in the community, direct action for the community, for young people. And Arts Emergency do such an incredible job, and there she was on the videos.
Right.
That's just wonderful. I met with him just 2 hours ago.
See, and this is about connections too, right?
Yes.
That's exactly it. And we are also obviously big fans of Arts Emergency around here. And I would say that for audience members who may not be familiar with their work, please look them up, support them. They're absolutely wonderful, as Lemn said, connecting young people with roles in the arts, and it's fantastic. We love them. Our theme for this year, as we said, for the festival is renewal.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm wondering if I gave you great power, which I would love to be able to do, I don't currently have it to bestow upon you, but as a thought experiment, if I could give you the power to renew one thing in Britain over the next 12 months, what would it be?
To renew. Oh gosh, what I would love to happen over the next 12 months is that whenever a person heard another language, they would feel like that language was part of the language of who they are. So in other words, if you speak to me in another language, I immediately feel that language is a part of who I am.
That'd be great.
I feel safe around you. That's what I mean. I would like to renew our idea of what Britain is.
Yeah.
Because it's wonderful. The amount of different people in this country is a celebration of humanity, and I would like us to feel that way, you know.
Yeah. Well, I would like us to feel that way too, and I think it's a wonderful example of it. That this idea that that having more languages makes us more human, not less, that surrounded by all of these ways of thinking about the world and talking about the world, that, you know, that if somebody has an accent, I'm one of these terrible Americans who can only speak one language, but whenever I hear somebody with an accent, I think, oh, they speak more than one language. Like, that's amazing.
Yeah.
I would love a vision of Britain that said that all of these languages are what make us British, and all of these languages are what make us human. Wouldn't that be? That's a renewal worth fighting for. We have one final question from the audience, which is, and it may be building on from this idea, but it's picking up on the sense of division that is everywhere in our society right now, the fear and the frustration. And the question is, how, or maybe where, can we find some shared ideas when we are so divided? Do you have any thoughts on how we're going to try to rebuild that collectivity?
Well, I hope that this is very general. I apologize. Oh, actually, I heard a friend from a museum tell me about a workshop she gives where she asks people in the museum who work in the museum to go to a venue or an event or a place that they feel nervous about going into, and then to come back to the museum with all of their colleagues and discuss what they felt. And the word is threshold anxiety. And once you realize that you can feel that in other places, you can then empathize that other people may feel that when they come to you, feel like, discuss how you felt in those places, and think of how you can change your environment to counter those feelings that other people may have when they come into museum and educational institutes, etc. I have totally lost what that question was.
The question, but I think you've answered it. And I love the phrase threshold anxiety, which I hadn't heard before. It's really, it's right on it, right? The question was, how can we try to find points of connectivity and collectivity in this time of such great division and fear and frustration? But you just said, so crossing a threshold, being reminded of how frightening that can be. How
it feels for you,
Yeah.
And then understanding that other people will be feeling that as well. Empathy would be a wonderful more empathy, more understanding of others, especially when we find ourselves in those situations where we have a clear gut reaction. We need to question those things and try to empathize as much as we can. It's the gift that keeps on giving.
Absolutely. And I think that it is, again, I mean, we will bring it back to this being human and being about being human, because too often I think people, when we think about being human, we think about our experiences, but of course being human is this grand collective experience. And to also think about what it means for other people to be human and the humanity of others, and where those meeting points are.
I think that, I mean, I saw this in the film that you showed, actually. I saw it in one of the researchers who was so enthusiastic about the connections that she was making within the community, which she's also part of, you know, and I could see that in her. It's the gift that keeps on giving. You know, the more that you can care for others, the more you will feel better about yourself. Weirdly, the more you give away, the more you get back.
It's so true. I wish we could just, I need to like bottle this talk and share it with everybody, because I personally have found this really, really inspiring and encouraging, just to be reminded how many of us are out there, you know, thinking in similar ways and trying to fight the same battles. And as you say, to suddenly, you know, all encounter arts emergency and realize that to a certain extent, arts emergency is the answer. It just is. Yeah. We'll turn to them. but there are a lot. I mean, we're obviously being facetious because what we're here to do is to celebrate how many wonderful organizations there are all over the country, all over the world.
Yes, there is so much out there. It's a good time to be alive. It really is. I really do believe that.
Well, I'll tell you what, you're the first person who said that to me in like 2 years. And I'm not even joking. I don't think I've heard anybody say that phrase for like 2 years. And it's really good to hear. So thank you for saying that it's a good time to be alive. I could keep doing this all night, but you don't want to keep doing this all night. And we have promised to wrap this up. People do need to go be human with other humans and have other obligations. So I'm just going to thank you, Lemn, for your time and your energy and your heart and your mind and your cheer, and for all of your wisdom about being human. I also want to thank again our organizers and Arts Emergency for their support of the video. Just a reminder again that our festival runs between the 11th and the 20th of November. It will be happening online and it will be happening around you. We have a mix of different types of events. So do please take a look at what is happening in your local area. Or as I said, you can take part from the comfort of your own home. While many events are booked up because of course the pandemic means that we have restrictions obviously about meeting up, there are still spots available and you can find these on the Being Human Festival website. So we really do hope that everyone will join us. We also would ask you to spread the word. We are a national festival, but we are still small, and we are trying just to make people aware that we're out there, that these free events are happening and that they are for everyone, and everyone is invited to take part, and hopefully you will find something for you. So if you enjoy what you find, please do spread the word and share. Please do support your local arts and humanities community groups and organizations like Arts Emergency and all of the wonderful ones that are around you, the 220 that we are working with all over the country. So please support the people working with arts and humanities. Please come celebrate. The festival is about celebrating being human and celebrating curiosity and knowledge and connection. And we could not have had a more perfect person to do that with than Lemn Sissay. Thank you so much. It was a really great pleasure to meet you. I hope we might be able to convince you to join us again sometime. And thank you so much. And best of luck to everyone, and best of luck for the festival organizers. And we look forward to seeing you here or in real life person very soon. Thank you all very much for coming, and have a wonderful evening. Good night.